Welcome to Everyday Ethics, everybody. I hope you're getting ready to have a really nice weekend. Uh, Personally, I plan on having a very nice weekend, and I appreciate all those who have joined me here today. See if I can just share this real quick. All right, that's done. Um, so I got something going on my screen here. I don't know what that's all about. Okay, it's gone. So today I want to talk a little bit about addiction. Unless, if people have questions or topics they want to talk about, by all means, let me know. And remember, our super chats are working here, and we really appreciate them. So we had a conversation earlier today on the Capitalist Corner about addiction and whether addiction is a disease or not. And all my life, I've heard, by the way, that addiction was a disease. So let me just give you a little background. Both of my parents were heroin addicts. My father was an alcoholic. Both my grandmothers were alcoholics. When I became of age, I was an alcoholic. I also was a heroin addict. Not for very long, but nevertheless, addiction, is not it's a rough scene. And I always heard that addiction was a disease, and the idea of it being a disease never quite sit well with me. It seemed like it was a cop out or an excuse for poor behavior. And I just wonder what you guys think about this. Is it an excuse? Or is it legitimate to think of addiction as a disease? Now, if you look back a little bit at the history of the concept, there's a guy named H.M., I think Jelinek or Hellenic. It's with a J. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but he conceptualized first alcoholism as a disease. And the idea was, and it was anybody that actually went through withdrawals through delirium tremens was a alcoholic. But from there, they expanded it to drug addiction, to gambling addiction, eating addiction. It's all to be thought of as a disease. And when I was in programs in prison, they taught that, addiction, it's an allergy. And when you first, you take it, it just causes this uncontrollable craving. So, well, first of all, I remember picking my mother up. My mother was in prison, and I picked her up from prison, and she got out. And then she went and got high. My father, the same thing. My father did prison time. He got out, and then he went and got high. And I'm just thinking, well, hold on. That seems to me like it's a choice, right? And, even before I went to prison, I decided to get off the heroin. I got on the methadone program. I made a choice, and I stopped using. Once I was in prison, I started using again. I would smoke pot. I sniffed heroin, on a semi-regular basis. And then in 2004, I decided enough was enough. I don't want to be doing heroin any longer. And I quit cold turkey, done. That was it. I went to a program. I got back from the program. My cellie had heroin spread out on the table and offered it to me. And I said, no, I'm done. I have not touched it since. That was, I believe, May 13th, 2004. And I haven't done it since. But yes, heroin. So first of all, do you think it's a disease? I don't. I understand addiction is very real, especially once you get into the physical components of it. Very, very painful to get off of it. Psychologically, it has a pull. I don't deny any of that. I just take an issue with the idea that it is a disease over which there's nothing that we can do, because I firmly believe that we can overcome it. And it's not like I'm on an island here when I say it's not a disease. Psychologists Stanton Peele, Jeffrey Shaler both said it's not a disease. I believe Albert Ellis and William Glasser of rational emotive behavior therapy and reality therapy, respectively, said that it was not a disease. And there's much debate within more than what they would have us believe about whether it's a disease or not. Albert Bandura, in his studies on self-efficacy, showed that the more a person felt like they had control over this or could do something about it, the more effective they were at overcoming it. My personal experience tells me that a desire to stop, a building of one's self-esteem, and fixing up, the underlying issues that lead one to use drugs in the beginning, that once you overcome those things, it becomes much easier to not do the drugs. For instance, I used alcohol because I wanted to have courage to fight or talk to girls, and that sure, it helped a lot with it. I also wanted to evade the painful reality of who I was and what my life was. But once I became more and more comfortable with myself, I'm less and less inclined to want to do those things. Yes, Jenna Kleem says she's not sure if it's a disease, but genetics have an effect. Sure. I mean, we are obviously genetic creatures, and to think that our genetics don't affect us is, just naive. But there's a far cry between saying our genetics impact us and believing in genetic determinism, that I'm determined to, become an addict or an alcoholic or such a thing. So there's a couple of things that I would like to talk about in relation to this idea of addiction being a disease. The first is the moral agency of ourselves. Are we responsible for what we put in our bodies and how we conduct ourselves? And even if we do end up with an addiction, are we responsible to get off of it, to fix it? And I say absolutely unequivocally yes. We have choice. We're moral agents, and it is our responsibility to do something. But there's another question too, and that is, how do we deal with loved ones who are addicts? What is the right thing to do? Tough love, cut them out of our lives altogether? Do we help them? Do we continue to allow them to abuse us? What's the thing to do? So I think there's a few ways to look at this. One, if I love somebody and I care about somebody, I absolutely want to help them overcome addiction, but they have to want to overcome it, right? I can't make a person want to overcome addiction. Believe me, I tried with my parents all the time. Please, 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 begging. It does no good. I remember a friend of mine had a father who died of a drug overdose, and the friend told me, you should really talk to your parents and see if you can get them to quit. And I remember telling him, dude, that's like, you're barking up the wrong tree. There's nothing you can do. So if somebody in my life wanted to put forth the effort to change, and that person was an addict, I don't think I have a duty to help, but I would if that person is of value to me. But I'm not going to do it at my own detriment, right? I'm not going to be helping somebody who is stealing from me, lying to me, trying to manipulate me, or somebody that I'm going to have to be bailing out of prison or chasing around the streets to try to get them to come home. I'm not doing any of that. So, and I don't have that obligation. Remember, egoism. Egoism means acting in my own interest, you acting in your own interest. That's what it's all about, right? So it's simply not in my interest to enable somebody in their addiction, to continue to put myself out there at my detriment to help that person. And nor is it anybody's responsibility to do that for me. If I went out and started using drugs again, everybody that stood by me all this time should absolutely cut me off and kick me to the curb. See, so Persephone, who prays for Satan, says, is that a one strike rule? Where's the cutoff though? Well, that's in ethics, right? And I'm going to get into something else in a few minutes about this. Sometimes it's a judgment call, right? And it's not like we have commandments. That's like a religious idea. There's not commandments that tell us thou shalt cut off the drug addict if they steal from you one time. Ultimately, you have to gauge the person's effort, the person's sincerity. Is that person apologizing? Are they paying you back? Are they willing to make amends in other ways? Are they taking steps to grow? And, cases may be different, and your personal tolerance might be different. Maybe, if like I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, I simply cannot enmesh myself in that world. So my tolerance for it ought to be far less than maybe somebody else's can. So Katie Ellis says you can do only so much to help somebody, but they ultimately have to help themselves. You can be there for somebody while setting boundaries and making it known what you are not going to allow. That's true. My friend Danny says definitely a one strike rule for him. And I can understand that. from his perspective, given that, the way that we grew up, we're, in a neighborhood with drugs, people in our lives are on drugs. Danny gives the $2 super chat. All right, Danny, look at that. That's not Danny's picture, though, folks. I don't know who that is. It looks like an elderly woman. But nevertheless, thank you, Danny. Danny and I are going out to dinner tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. We have regular get-togethers, and tonight we're going to go to the Heirloom Market in Wethersfield, Connecticut, for coffee and dinner and good conversation. So yeah, and what can you do, if you are involved with somebody who's in a Jenna Cleem says me. Oh, Jenna, you're too much. You are funny. But Daniel, once again, thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat. So what can you do if somebody's an addict? Like, what kind of conversations can you have? What can you say to somebody? So there's something called motivational interviewing, where you can, put it to somebody. What are you doing? Like, what benefits are you getting out of doing drugs? And you kind of, through like a Columbo style talking with them, try to get them to see that life is so much better. And that's certainly something that you can do. But again, it always comes down to the person. Now, like, when I decided to change, the fact that I had so much support benefited me immensely, but I was willing to put in the work. When my friend Carlos decided to change, oh, wow, another $1.99 from Danny. Look at this. Whoa. That's great. I hope he doesn't expect me to put out after dinner tonight. So given that what I was willing to, I wanted to talk about Carlos. So when Carlos was willing to change, he was willing to put forth the effort. So I was willing to go through hell with him because he was my friend. Brent as well. Brent went through hell with me. I went through hell with him because of the effort that was there. So if I have somebody in my life that's willing to put forth the effort to change, personally, it's worth it to me. People did that for me, so I want to be willing to do that for others. Now, back to the I'm going to pivot a little bit. I would like some questions from the audience. I really would. I would like to know what you think about this topic. Do you have any ethical quandaries or ethical questions that you think would be worthy of discussing? I would love to hear them. I would love to engage the conversation. So please let me know. So I watched I find that this is a big problem, by the way. I'm, with a secular ethic, like rational egoism is based on Ayn Rand's objectivism. It's an objective ethic, but it's not a religious ethic. It's not about commandments and, thou shalt be selfish. It's about choice. It's about choosing to do what's right for me, based on my life as the standard. But anyway, so I watched this debate last night between a guy named Liquid Zulu and the comedian / podcaster Dave Smith. And Liquid Zulu claims to be an objectivist. He's not. I don't want to get into the deep theoretical stuff, but he isn't. But anyways, so he says that he would not steal a penny to basically save the world. He wouldn't steal anything to stop the torture of his children or of his mother. Now, this is just ludicrous. You're taking this like it's a religion, like you're getting commandments from God. Thou shalt not steal under any circumstances. And then, if the world comes to an end, you're going to be rewarded in the hereafter. The fact of the matter is, you're taking something that's downstream from your ethical standard, right? The idea that we shouldn't initiate force against other people, but that's downstream from my life is my standard of value, right? So I'm going to, in order to adhere to a principle downstream about not initiating force, cut my life off. I'm defeating the very purpose of ethics. The purpose of ethics is so that we can flourish, so that we can grow, so that we can maintain ourselves. It's basically the rule book or the guidelines that don't come when you're born. Jenna Cleem says 2 of her 4 husbands were alcoholic. So obviously, Jenna doesn't think there's anything wrong with divorce. I don't either. Well, unless they all passed. If they did, I'm sorry. But Jenna's previously said that one of her husbands was a criminal, 2 were alcoholics. I'm curious, Jenna, is why do you think that you were attracted to that? Because I firmly believe that people are there's attracted to what they value, and there's a reason that we are attracted to certain people. As oh, they all passed. I'm sorry, Jenna. So William James, not William James, I'm sorry. James Allen said in his great book, As a Man Thinketh, that men attract what they are, not what they want. And I think that's very, very true. If you're a person of integrity, you attract people of integrity. If you are somebody who's a cheater, you are attracted to cheaters. That sort of thing. Jenna says she's not. I don't know if she's saying she's not sorry they passed or maybe I don't know, but Jenna's awesome, by the way. Persephone, by the way, who prays for Satan is Persephone. She's the producer for us on the Capitalist Corner show. She puts out she gives me the Capitalist Corner clips. She does the Capitalist Corner out of context takes for us. So so when you see who prays for Satan, that's who it is. Katie Ellis says, my ex, who I'm still friends with, he's been in a rehab kind of facility and been sober for 11 months now. That's great. However, they have rules and don't allow him to drink. I still talk to him, but not sure. I can trust that he will stay sober if they put him in his own apartment. That's a very tough situation. Most people do not stay sober. So that's a tough case. That's for you to decide, Katie, what is best for you, what is going to benefit your life, what is going to help you to be the best person that you're capable of being and have the best life that you can have. It's not about what you can do for that guy. And I wish him the best, and I hope that he comes around on that. Meeting men in bars can be a huge problem. Yes, Jenna. I think that is probably a very wise take. Do you still meet men in bars, Jenna? I'm just curious about this. If that's something that you do you still go there and maybe look for, I don't know, one night stands or long-term relationships? By the way, I'm curious, what do people think about the one night stand? Are one night stands okay? Are they not okay? Is it okay just to go and hook up with some random person? I am going to say that in most cases, I'm not going to give it thou shall not ever have a one night stand, but in most cases, it's a bad idea. In most cases, if you have somebody that's just willing to have sex with strangers, that person's self-esteem is probably not very good. If you're the kind of person that's looking to have sex with strangers, your self-esteem probably is not very good. And that's a combustible situation. It's probably not a wise thing to do. Katie Ellis says, I would love for him to be, however, he physically hurt me so bad. It's hard because he's great sober, but can't afford my safety if he doesn't stay sober. If he has been abusive, Katie, run like hell. Stay the hell away from him. You do not need somebody in your life that's been abusive. If he's been abusive in the past, very strong likelihood he will be abusive in the future, especially if you met them in a bar. James Valiant says, I need to be wined and dined. Well, I'm not going to be the one whining and dining you, Jim. I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that. But yeah, I really do. I think that random sex is not generally a good idea. Sex is, I mean, if you think of sex as purely a physical thing, and then you say, oh, it's just physical, but it really isn't. There are deep, psychological effects from having sex. Great pleasure, physical, of course, but there's also psychological and emotional elements. I once read in a book about the human brain about deep limbic bonding, that if you have sex with somebody repeatedly, you will come to I don't want to say love, but really be kind of wrapped up in that person because of the fact that you've continued to have sex with them. So it's not just a physical act. I would it doesn't mean, I'm not saying, look, you have to love every single person you have sex with, but I think that you ought to have some shared values, shared understanding, that kind of thing. Katie Ellis is putting forth Jenna Kleem says it all started in the 60s, so times were different. Yes, they had, of course, the LSD, I suppose, was a big part of that, and the marijuana and the drugs as well. I'd be curious to what Jim Valiant thinks about one night stands, Jim, if you don't mind putting it in the comment section here. There, that would be fantastic. Let me know. I do not think that they are, generally speaking, a good idea, especially if you tie them in with the previous stuff when you're talking about doing drugs. If you are doing drugs or alcohol and then going and getting into these situations, very big mistake. And if you're a guy and you're meeting a woman who's drunk at a bar, probably not a good idea to get involved with her, and vice versa. If you're a girl getting involved with some dude who's drunk at a bar, probably not a good idea. So what about oh, look at this. Another $1.99 from Danny. Danny is really trying to start the trend here of people giving. Oh, Danny, I hope you do start a trend. That'd be great. Jim Valiant says he thinks they are generally a bad idea. I think he's right. But back to the drugs. What about if you are not a drug addict? Is it okay to occasionally get drunk or smoke some marijuana or even harder drugs? I mean, I know that we're all told about these harder drugs that if you do them, you're going to, become this zombie like addict. But there's plenty of people that can do drugs, even the hard ones, and not become addicted. So do you think that it's unethical to do this? And I'm going to say that when it comes to, say, marijuana, if you want to smoke marijuana occasionally, or even better, the gummies, I don't see anything ethically wrong with that. Oh, look at this. Jenna Kleem takes the challenge and donates $5 to the super chat situation. Awesome. Thank you so much. Deeper with Diego says most people can do hard drugs and not get addicted. I've actually read that as well. But so in the case of marijuana, if you're smoking it every day, I think it will probably deplete your motivation. It will, it's not good for your brain. It, kills brain cells, but also the smoking of it is bad for the lungs. So not good, but occasionally smoking, or even better, taking gummies, I see nothing wrong with that. If you can do it, go out and have pleasure. Drinking is actually more harmful for you than marijuana. I mean, in terms of what it does to your body, to your brain. So I would say if you're going to drink once in a while, I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're getting inebriated to the point where you're just doing bad, dumb things, that's a different story. But going out and tossing a few back with your friends, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, when you get to the harder drugs, it becomes more complicated. And I'm going to tell you why. So let's just say heroin is completely legal. If heroin is completely legal, you go down to the, your local CVS or whatever, and you go buy some and you do a little bit, you relax, on a weekend, whatever. I would see nothing wrong with that. However, if you go and buy heroin on the street, you now don't know what's in it, what it's mixed with, how potent it is. I would say doing street heroin is unethical in every single situation because of the extreme risk of death that you're putting yourself at, because you just don't know. Same thing with street cocaine. If somebody was doing, if you had pharmaceutical cocaine, if it was legal, same thing. Some people could do it and be just fine, and I wouldn't call it necessarily unethical. But if you're going and buying this stuff off of the street, it's just way, way, way too dangerous. I count LSD as a hard drug. She counts them as separate. Well, the problem again now, LSD, you're going and you're buying this. It's made in a lab somewhere, and you're doing it. You don't know the potency. You don't know what it's made with. So I would highly recommend against it. And I would say, yes, this is an unethical thing to do. MDMA. Now, ecstasy, the pure form, again, I don't see it as unethical. But if you're going to buy something on the street that's been mixed with something else, you don't know what's there, that's a different story. I'm going to say that it would be unethical to do it. Somebody, who's this up here? I never went out to seek one night stands, but I've had a lot of partners. I typically wanted to get to know them more, but if they were one night stands, that was their choice. I don't know. Lauren is talking about politics. This really isn't a political show, Lauren. I'm sorry, but I highly recommend checking us out on the Capitalist Corner every day at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 Pacific. I don't know what that says, Diego, because you're using your thing again. They do sell kits, which are important if you're going to do drugs. Well, that's true, but the kits you're talking about, I assume you're talking Narcan. That's just for overdose. But what is other toxins might be in it? You don't know, and it's just not worth the risk. LSD, again, I'm not saying it's inherently bad if you know what's in it, but you just don't. You're going to buy this stuff on the street. Very, very risky, very, very dangerous. Highly recommend against it. I do not think the case can be made that it is in your interest to do these things. Jenna Kleem has the big eyeballs out, I think, because she's thinking about Diego and the affairs he's having. I don't know. Jim Valiant says, I used a bunch of drugs when I was young, having for decades now. I did not become an addict. Yeah, I really think most people do not. Oh, Persephone says test kits to see what is in the drugs you're doing and the potency. Oh, well, that's a different story. I don't have, look at this. I didn't know that. Persephone, that might change the calculation. Let's see here. Greg Lewis, let me just say, Greg Lewis is freaking awesome. Love Greg Lewis. $20 to the super chat. Greg is awesome, and it's not just because he gave the $20. It's because Greg gave me one of my best lines. Absolutely love it. I had a debate, interestingly, on ethics with a professor of philosophy, Mike Humer, and Greg Lewis said of the debate that for me, it was like trying to nail Jello to a tree because Mike was so, slippery. Now, let me just say, I like Mike Humer. I'm not trying to disparage him. I disagree with him on ethics. I disagree with him on politics. I've debated him on anarchy as well, but I've also interviewed him. I think he's a really nice guy. Greg says, according to my day planner, I've got 14 days, 11 hours, and 10 minutes of your podcast under my belt. Awesome. Greg rocks. That is freaking awesome, Greg. Nothing from the streets. I agree with No Namey 7. Kira Felix says, who would have known James knew how to party? Oh my God. Jim Valiant is an absolute hoot to hang around with. Let me just tell you, Jim Valiant, Mark Pellegrino, Andy Bernstein, these guys really give the lie to the idea that objectivists don't know how to have fun or are boring people. Absolute. Just really, really fun people to associate with, to hang around with. Great, great, great people. Love them all. Daniel Suska, again, with the $1.99. That is freaking awesome. We're racking up the dough today. That is definitely in my interest. My goal long-term is to do podcasting. And I got to be honest with you. While I like, politics, I kind of feel is, thank you, Jim. Jim says, I am too. Politics is important. It's vital, but I much prefer doing shows like this, where we're talking about ethics, talking about everyday behavior, talking about self-improvement. I love it. I love doing the Self-Made Soul on Saturdays on Mark Pellegrino's Patreon, where we discuss the intersection between philosophy and psychology. These are the things that I find to be very fascinating, very, very important, but politics not going away. So, we kind of have to do it. Oh, thank you so much for saying I am a great podcaster. I really appreciate it. Who prays for Satan evidently is trying to get the audience addicted to drugs. She's really trying to sell us on these purity test kits for coke, LSD, MDMA, etc. She says they're all affordable. Evidently, she has been doing comparison shopping or some such thing as that. She says, I am an amazing podcaster and a huge inspiration. Thank you. so much. Daniel Suska says he likes these shows better as well. We're almost done. I just want to tell you, you should check out The Rational Egoist, my show, my podcast. I did a great interview with Catherine Dickerson on the benevolence of reason. Catherine Dickerson, parent effectiveness training. She teaches. She's a psychotherapist for 30 years. She was personal assistant to both Peter Schwartz and Leonard Peikoff. It was an absolute blast interviewing her. Very informative. All right, folks, I have got to take off right now. I thank you all so much, and I love you. Thanks for joining me. I will be back Monday at the same time. Remember to check out The Rational Egoist. Remember to check out The Capitalist Corner. But remember to check this out. Oh, and The Self-Made Soul with Mark Pellegrino. Thank you very, very much. Really, really enjoy you guys.